and welcome back to the Growth Junction podcast, where we dive deep into the world of Bitcoin finance and crypto by speaking with industry leaders who are shaping the future of the space. I'm Dennis. I've been in the crypto space for 2.5 cycles. I've definitely seen and suffered the highs and lows in my wallets. And before this, I worked for multiple marketing companies, and one of them being a top crypto agency. Um, Today, I'm joined by somebody who's a Bitcoin mining expert and owner of Abundant Minds, Beau Turner. Welcome to the show, Beau. Why don't you just introduce yourself to the crowd and what you do a little bit?
Thank you, Dennis. I really appreciate you having me on. And so my name's Beau. I own a company called Abundant Minds. We're a Bitcoin mining co-location hosting company, and we're based in Oregon, the Pacific Northwest. I like to call it Eden for Bitcoin miners because the climate is so beautiful, keeps the miners really happy and healthy for a long time, and we've got a ton of renewable energy. So it's really just a perfect symbiotic place where we can mine and have a really positive impact on our communities and the environment and secure the network. And before I was in Bitcoin mining full time, before I knew that you could be a professional Bitcoin miner with your whole energy and time, I was a real estate investor and I got my degree in engineering management and information systems. So I built a real estate company, did a lot of development across the Southeast, and then found a lovely way that I could actually apply engineering in a way that could build a better world that really appealed to me in a way that nothing else did. I never thought that I would get a chance to really enjoy the process of engineering. I thought it was either building better structures or optimizing people's industrial or manufacturing systems or something else that just was, I'm sure, helpful, but didn't ignite a fire in my soul like Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining does. And I really think that this vehicle, Bitcoin mining, is a perfect way to reinvent the world of energy, of money, of computing, and just bring about this incredible way of living that I think all Bitcoiners on some level know is possible and know that that's what we're building toward. And to me, mining is the most direct and most physical expression of that new world that we're all building. So I feel super blessed to get to work in this space. And I feel so grateful to get to serve our clients in the way that I do. And, at the end of the day, all that we're doing is serving a need that I really did not have met when I was first getting into the space. With any new industry, there's always glitches, there's always bad actors, there's always people who are just there for speculation, and are essentially just riding the coattails of a trend. And I found that was the case in mining. I had multiple times where I got in and looked for a co-location host that would really take care of me and take care of my investment and help me get into mining, which to me is this really beautiful way of earning passive income. And every time it just got messed up by bad partners. So I decided to become the partner that I wish that I had. And here we are today.
Yeah, awesome. So you decided to become the source simply. Yeah, sounds like you have really good, nice intentions, and you're super stoked to be working with something that you really love. And I mean, that's the way to really provide for your clients when you really love what you're doing. They feel it, you feel it, and the relationship can really blossom, I think. So. Yeah, thank you so much for this introduction. So you mentioned the climate. Is that the temperature and stuff? Is that good for the miners and their longevity?
Yeah, so we work in an industry where you think of traditional data centers. They're these very sophisticated structures that are climate controlled. They're insulating very expensive computing equipment from the elements, providing super high uptime, networking, and all of this. Anytime you step into a traditional data center, it looks like a very futuristic building. Mines are usually not like that. And I think people have an idea that they are just as futuristic and well controlled. But in most cases, Bitcoin mining facilities are a much more primitive version of a data center. They don't need nearly as much, and so they're often
Hmm.
engineered to a lower standard. And so when you put a facility like that in a place like Texas or Oklahoma or somewhere in the southeast of the US, or even, a Central American country or the desert in North Africa, you've got these issues that crop up where if you don't build the proper shell, the proper housing,
Hmm.
and you expose these computers to the elements, then they will go through these thermal cycles of getting very hot and very cold. And even just running at too hot of a temperature will shorten the lifespan of one of these machines by quite a bit. So in the
Okay.
Pacific Northwest, we've got a couple of really nice things. One is the temperature, which is this really key component. It helps the machine live longer, helps it prevent going through all of these different thermal cycles. But it also, we've got really clean air up here. So we're just far enough from the ocean, and we don't have enough like particulate in the air, whether it's dust
Hmm.
or plant matter, that the air filters and everything don't get clogged up and make their machines run less efficiently. So we've got this really nice mix of qualities, not just the temperature, but the temperature is definitely the most important thing that miners have to optimize for. And even if you don't shorten the life of the machine with a hot temperature, you will definitely run less efficiently and end up spending quite a bit more for your energy just to keep them cool.
Yeah, and I guess that's what maybe the most important thing to make it efficient in Bitcoin mining, as one Bitcoin can cost as much as, to get it out is super expensive, right? So it's got to be very, very efficient. What is your typical client? Do you work with B2B, or is it what is it?
So our ideal client really is not so dissimilar to who I was when I was first getting into this space. I was evaluating whether to buy more real estate,
Hmm.
rental properties, commercial properties, or get into mining. And so these are people that are looking at whether they should put another quarter million to a million into some kind of investment property or try something new.
Yeah.
And I'm of the opinion that mining is the thing to get into, at least with a portion of your portfolio.
Hmm.
It sits at the intersection of so many trends that if you ignore them in 10 years, I think you're going to be quite confused. The energy landscape, the computing landscape, the financial infrastructure landscape, I think it will all look very different in a decade. And apart from investing to get a return, you often invest in things so that you can understand the world around you and make better business decisions. And so I think mining is one of those things that can unlock deeper understanding of what the world might look like. So
Hmm.
our ideal client, most of our clients are either small business owners, high net worth investors, 8 or 9 figure entrepreneurs, these
Yeah.
people that are already quite successful in what they're doing, but they don't need to go out and learn how to do this themselves. They're not looking for another job. They're really looking for a passive investment, a fully managed investment where they can
Hmm.
get a strong return and learn as they earn, but not be
Yeah.
forced to become an expert overnight so that they can protect their investment. They really want to be able to keep focusing on, their business, which is already successful, their investments, which are already successful, and their family, which is why we do any of this to begin with, so that we have more time and ability to experience freedom in life with our families.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So it's a done for you service basically. You pay and then it's set up, and repairs are done, and maintenance, everything.
Totally hands off, all inclusive. I mentioned a little bit about my early experiences. I found that that
Hmm.
was very rarely the case where you would be told a
Yeah.
price and then it's really that price. So I learned from that experience, and I wanted to protect our clients from the experience of getting nickel and dimed. And really,
Hmm.
we have a client who works with a couple of other companies and is actually moving his several hundred miners all the way over to us. And one
Right.
thing he said to me was, most of these companies, they make their money on fake repairs, and that was something we didn't want to do.
Ooh,
I
okay.
would
Yeah.
I would much rather know exactly what you're getting into and charge a premium price
Hmm.
for a premium
Hmm.
service, and then
Yeah.
never get these crazy charges again.
It's like that car mechanic who invents all kinds of problems for you, and you have no idea, and you just pay for it.
Yeah. And
That
if you don't
sucks.
know any better, what are you going to do?
Exactly. So, what's the most surprising trends and methods you've observed in how miners are, adapting to fluctuating energy costs, the grid demands? I know you are doing a lot of renewable energy with water and stuff, which is awesome. But what, how are you tackling this issue?
Yeah, so miners at their core y- are really having to become energy companies, and they have had to from the start. So if you think about the ongoing operating expense for a mining company, whether it's a co-location company or you're just doing your own mining, about 80 to maybe 90% of your overall cost on an ongoing basis is your energy. So it
Yeah.
really pays you to optimize your energy procurement in whatever way you can. So there's a couple ways that companies do that. One, like you mentioned, we're on hydropower, renewable power, which is often cheaper, and it's quite a bit more stable. In the case of hydropower, there's not a large fluctuation in market prices like gas
Okay.
markets. Um, Another way that miners like to participate is through demand response and curtailment programs. So Bitcoin mining is this amazing energy resource for so many more reasons that I could ever get to in an hour. Um, but one of them is its interruptibility. So you can turn off Bitcoin miners at any point within 60 seconds or even faster and
Hmm.
respond to a grid's need for additional energy. And in that case, you are often interrupting for a very small amount of time, call it 1% of the year, and saving your
Hmm.
utility 10 to 15% of its annual costs, because those peak hours, the parts of the year where it's hottest or where it's coldest, contribute to a huge amount of the cost because of the need to recruit these emergency energy resources.
Yeah.
So if you think about a grid system, whether you put on new generation, you turn on a fossil fuel powered power plant to provide that extra energy, or you reduce demand, it's the same
Hmm.
net impact. So miners are fulfilling that second objective, which is to reduce demand at these key moments where it matters most, and saving not just ourselves on our energy costs, but saving communities and utilities on their energy costs as well.
Yeah, and it's even worse at missing out on a block or two because you're saving anyway. All right. So Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining is misunderstood by the newcomers, and you see all kinds of stuff that Bitcoin is so destroying nature and using more energy than countries. So what do you say to newcomers that to change their view on Bitcoin mining and your business?
Yeah, so it depends on how long I have, because again, this gets so deep. This is
Hmm.
why this is such an interesting engineering problem. Is this touches so many different aspects of our world. The
Yeah.
first thing that I would say to people is Bitcoin mining uses more renewable energy sources than any other industry on the planet, and so we are, by that definition, the most sustainable industry on the planet. Uh, the other that takes a little longer to unpack is I think most people misunderstand that there's not an energy shortage in the world. There's actually a lot of energy waste in the world. And so if you can put more of that energy to use and you can find a use case or an industry that can use energy in a creative way that others can't, you're actually solving a huge problem of waste and resource misallocation. So Bitcoin miners, because we can set up right at the energy source and essentially run off of a cell signal or a Starlink, can monetize energy 24/7 and in an interruptible way in this fashion that no other industry in the world can. And so we're actually going and contributing to removing waste and even removing pollutants that otherwise remain unmitigated. The
Hmm.
best example of this would be vented methane at oil wells, the stranded gas that often just gets vented into the atmosphere or
Hmm.
combusted at the source. Similar to that is landfills. You know, there's a huge amount of unmitigated landfills all around the world that just leak methane into the atmosphere. And if you put Bitcoin miners, these modular data centers, at these locations, you actually are monetizing, so making use of a wasted resource while cleaning up the environment. And it's my opinion that this is the first economically viable, profitable way to clean up the environment that doesn't require a subsidy.
Hmm.
So that's the longer answer.
Yeah.
The
Wow.
the third component of that, which I would say is the kind of like the optimistic vision, the future vision, and what we're working towards, is we get to bootstrap the grid of the future. There's these problems on the grid with congestion, not enough transmission. You have no shortage of energy resources that want to come into the market and make energy cheaper for every consumer in the world, and they are limited by transmission capacity, which means that these projects can't get funded because they can't sell their energy. So if all you do is stand up these energy projects with an off-taker like a Bitcoin miner at the source and help them generate a return on investment while transmission is built, you're essentially bootstrapping the grid of the future and an abundant energy future for every consumer. So, there's so many different ways to unpack how wrong it is that Bitcoin mining energy use is a bad thing.
Yeah.
So hope that helps.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, that's great insights. I don't even know so much about mining, so that really helps me, and I really want to. I've thought about it for a long time to get into it also, but it's what's the threshold for somebody who doesn't have a seven-figure company to get into mining and have a meaningful chance to make some Bitcoin?
Yeah, so the nice thing about getting into Bitcoin mining with a host like us is you have essentially the same economics as somebody who's spending 6 or 7 figures on a mining setup. So every unit that you get, it scales linearly. So whether you're buying one machine or 100 machines, every machine is earning the same amount of Bitcoin. So we have
Okay.
quite a lot of clients who just have one machine with us. They've got $10,000 to spend. They want to get into it. They want to learn. And if you're working with us, you're still going to make money at that level. It's
Yeah.
it's the same economics. It's just when someone's coming in with 7 figures, it really starts to be a pretty appreciable snowball effect that happens from that kind of momentum. But you can
Yeah.
get one machine and get access to all of our educational resources. Come do site visits, learn. We're not locking people out who just want to get one machine, and those clients often are some of the happiest with our service because we serve them at a
Hmm.
level that most other companies frankly just won't.
Hmm. Awesome. So you buy the machine, and then you in the package you already prepay for the energy costs and everything, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of different options. I think that doing it that way is the smartest because it means that you're not incentivized to sell your Bitcoin when you mine it. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, if you just buy the machine and pay monthly for your energy, which is the other option, there's a part of your brain that might say, I should probably sell some Bitcoin as it gets mined to pay for this
Yeah.
electricity bill. But if you look historically, the people that had to pay for an electricity bill with their Bitcoin in, say, 2013 or 2014, that was an opportunity cost of millions or tens of millions of dollars
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
a single machine. So I always encourage people either prepay your electricity bill or set aside an amount of fiat that you're looking to convert into Bitcoin rather than paying your electricity bill out of your Bitcoin. I think that
Yeah.
long term, that serves people the best.
Hmm. Because the electricity cost can be quite equal to the cost of a Bitcoin in the end, isn't it?
It in the short term, you
Yeah.
you can of course just pay your electricity bill out of your Bitcoin and still make a profit and still stack Bitcoin. We have clients who do that. I don't
Hmm.
want to say that it's not possible, but if
Hmm.
you have a long-term view on Bitcoin, then you know that the electricity bill that you're paying for right now, that $200 electricity bill,
Yeah.
might be more like 2,000 or 20,000 within the next decade. So you'd
Yeah.
rather
Exactly.
probably hold the Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what made you get into all of this Bitcoin madness and give up your previous career?
Uh, I was first interested and first started buying Bitcoin in 2015. And I thought it was interesting, cool. I grew up with my parents and grandparents both had a very positive view on gold. So they thought that gold was
Hmm.
real money. And I believed that as well growing up. I felt like it was a much better alternative to fiat currency.
Hmm.
And so I like to say that I had the kind of neural wiring to accept and believe that a non sovereign store of value like Bitcoin could be a good idea. And I guess my biggest mistake was just not seeing how much potential there was. At that time, there was maybe 10 to 20 million, or excuse me, 10 to 20 billion of total market cap for Bitcoin. And I
Hmm.
thought, wow, that's already a lot of capital. That's already a pretty big company.
Yeah.
So how much more room is there really to run? Not even
Hmm.
thinking that there could be a world where it's 1 to 2 trillion in market cap. I guess we're sitting over 2 trillion at this point today.
Yeah.
And we've still got probably 100x to run, if you're running the math based on just getting an appreciable share of global assets.
Yeah.
So just having that background and seeing gold as money was what first got me interested. I did take a break where I didn't pay much attention to it and kind of went down
Hmm.
the real estate path. I was still studying engineering, still figuring out what I would like to do with my life. And I didn't necessarily see a full-time career path in the Bitcoin space. And then it took being reintroduced to it in 2020 with some of the early Sailor podcasts when he was,
Hmm.
evaluating it for himself. And I've always given a lot of weight to what someone who's quite far ahead of me says about how they're making decisions. And I thought, okay, here's a billionaire who's evaluating putting his entire corporate treasury into this. Maybe I should take another look. Maybe this isn't just a speculative way that you can potentially make a return. This is actually potentially one of the safest places that you could be with your money.
Yeah.
And you're just so early that most people don't see it that way.
Yeah.
And identifying asymmetric opportunities where the risk is lower than people perceive it to be and the upside is higher than people perceive it to be is how most of the impressive wealth in the world has been created. And I've always had that as a goal, to create resources, to create impact. So when I saw that could be a reasonable vehicle, I got headfirst back into the Bitcoin space. And, just like any good rabbit hole, the deeper you go, the deeper it becomes. And so
Hmm.
from the Bitcoin rabbit hole emerged the Bitcoin mining rabbit hole.
Hmm.
And then this whole energy conversation of remaking a world where energy is abundant for everybody. So
Yeah.
I'm hooked. I'm totally
Yeah.
hopelessly hooked.
I can notice that, and that's awesome. We need more of that in the world, especially with those good intentions. I can really notice. So that's awesome. Thank you for that service. Um, tomorrow is a day that everybody in Bitcoin or in crypto is looking forward to, and a potential reserve, a US Bitcoin or crypto reserve. Um, I guess like a guy like you couldn't maybe not care less because you're in for the long term anyway, but people are talking about a pump here and a dump there. But what do you think will happen tomorrow?
One of the things that I appreciate most about being in the mining space is that I've become so much less interested in short-term price movements.
Hmm.
Because I played the trading game for a part of my career, and we mentioned offline, many of us have had experiences in the broader crypto space and kind of edged more toward just being Bitcoin only. So I've found that the less that I focus on daily price moves, the better long-term decisions I make, and that has
Yeah.
worked out very well for me. That said, I think we're at a really important time where this is going from an asset that even just a couple months ago, the existing administration was trying to find ways to suppress and just block from being very successful, to the point where there's a lot of public favor for actually putting a strategic reserve together.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really important move because, in my mind, even though we love for Bitcoin to be this kind of individual freedom technology, it also is something that I believe is extremely helpful to balance a national budget over the long run. And it's just out of screen here. It's just outside of the frame, but I have the book Soft War. And I really think it's a national strategic imperative for this to be integrated in some way into a nation's future, whether it's through a strategic reserve or a strategic cash force. I think that the nations that do not catch on and do not get on board with this are going to be left very far behind in a very quick fashion. And so I would much rather see my home country take a positive view,
Yeah.
take an enlightened view, and use a very de minimis amount of their resources to get a very large portion of supply. Not because it pumps the bags for all the people who already hold it, but because if you miss out on it at this point, when you're printing the world's reserve currency, I think you've just made a strategic error. I would see printing paper that is backed by nothing to create the best money in the world as one of the highest forms of alchemy that you could ever imagine. So if they don't take this opportunity, they're lost.
Yeah, definitely. And the world needs a strong American economy, for sure. We don't want China to be leading the way and taking over. And so hopefully we get some good news tomorrow. So about the market, what's happening currently in the market? Is it more challenging? Is it getting easier, or how is it looking?
So specifically in the mining market, I would say that we're right at the beginning of the upswing, and you could say the same for the Bitcoin market as well. We've experienced a lot of positive price action over the last few months, and even though people are, crying about being below 90,000 or even dipping below 80,000, a couple months ago, that was double the price that we were just sitting at. So, it's funny how markets can very quickly get emotional in a silly way. Specifically in the mining market, I think that this cycle is not going to be much different than previous ones. The people who are allocated, the people who have hash rate online and who have available capacity are building something of really high value that comes into view only as the cycle starts to heat up. And if it's anything like last time, midway through the price run, mining capacity was just sold out. There was nowhere that you could deploy miners where rack space was open and immediately built. You were always looking at a 60 to 120 day time frame to get anything online. And so the people who saw that coming ahead of time and made the infrastructure investment were heavily rewarded. And if you had hash rate online, your margins went from 50% to 95% seemingly overnight, just over the course of a couple of
Right.
months. And so, just like any market, the people who see around the corner and who allocate themselves ahead of it are very richly rewarded. The people who FOMO in too late usually don't have anywhere that they can really slide into and find an opportunity. And so, I'm extremely bullish on mining. And again, in this kind of longer time frame, I think we're still so early in unlocking the societal value that comes from mining. So until we have an S9 heating everybody's home and every pool in the world is heated by an immersion system, I think we're still very early because otherwise you're just generating heat and not double spending it.
Yeah. Awesome. So what are some of your goals for Abundant Minds in, let's say, 6, 12, and 36 months from now, depending on where in this cycle we are? I mean, who knows? But yeah, how do you see that?
Yeah, so I'll stick to the 36-month time frame because that's where we've kind of set our company vision goals. I think that's long enough that you can achieve something really meaningful, but short enough that you can kind of put the blocks in place to focus on it. It's not some pipe dream. So the goal within the next 3 years is for us to become the largest grid balancing resource in the Pacific Northwest. And so for us, that means getting to about a size of 300 to 400 megawatts.
Yeah.
And if we achieve that, then we have the ability to lower the cost of energy for everybody in the Pacific Northwest through those programs that I mentioned toward the beginning of the podcast. If we can be that resource for this region, then we can meaningfully improve the quality of life for people, improve the ability for other businesses to locate here. Energy is upstream of every economic activity that we take as people. And so if we can have an impact on that system, if you've ever read the book or heard the term the butterfly effect, where a butterfly flaps its wings and then across the world a tornado appears, I think that impacting energy systems in that way is that butterfly effect to create a world that's much more prosperous.
That's so cool. That's a really meaningful goal also. Are you doing anything with the heat in the mines right now?
Yeah, so our second facility just outside of Eugene, Oregon, that's a site where after our second deployment, we'll actually have 2 rows of these modular data centers pointed in toward each other. And between those rows of data centers, we will have a greenhouse growing fresh food for the local food bank. And so that's our chief heat reuse application right now is providing fresh food in a place where it would normally be pretty hard to grow fresh food in the winter.
Yeah, that is so awesome. It sounds like a little paradise almost. So now we're reaching kind of the end, slowly for surely here, but I usually ask my guest if they had a magic wand and could change one thing right now for their business. What would it be?
Yeah, let me think about that for a second. I think the biggest impact that we can have is not blocked by anything physical per se. There's no lack of capital in the world. There's no lack of energy in the world. We really do live in an abundant world. And if I could wave a magic wand and get people to understand something, it would be that we're all only blocked by our ability to see opportunity and take action on it. So waving that wand, as much as I love educating and I love teaching people about this, I would close the gap on how long it takes people to understand what they're looking at when they see Bitcoin, when they see mining and energy use, when they see the potential for a truly abundant world. So with that wand wave, I would just increase the understanding of everybody around us. And through that, I think resources would be allocated much more wisely, and that we could have, the 3-year impact that I'm looking at within the span of 12 months. So there's nothing blocking us other than people getting what we're working on.
Yeah. It's really amazing to think of that world that is possible if Bitcoin becomes the standard, if, war is not affordable anymore, and these kind of things is super incredible. And I wish I had known in the beginning when I looked at the price in 2015 around this, and I thought money cannot be digital. And I had no idea even what inflation was. And Ethereum was $2 and Bitcoin was 1,000 or something. And had no idea about these things. But then I came across the book, the Bitcoin Standard, and I'm just blown away, just eating up that book and talking to my kids about inflation, pieces of Lego, and do you want a piece of Lego that you have 1,000 of, or do you want the one that is, special? Yeah, of course, the special one. Yeah, that's inflation, and from then on, it's been Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. So,
I would say Bitcoiners at their worst are very angry, jaded, and opinionated, and Bitcoiners at their best really are peaceful warriors, philosopher kings, the kind of people that usher in the future that we all want to live in. And that to me is worth waking up and embodying to the best of your ability every day.
Yeah.
That's why we do what we do.
Definitely. We have a responsibility, all of us. So, hey, Bo, that was really, really nice and insightful. Could you please tell the people where they can find you online, website? the education, and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dennis, thank you so much again for having me on. I've really enjoyed getting a chance to speak with you, and you asked really great questions. So really, thank you for giving me a chance to be on. People can find us at our website, which is abundantminds.com. We've got Instagram pages, Twitter pages, Facebook. If you just search on pretty much any social platform at Abundant Minds, you'll find us. You can also find me on Twitter, Beau_Turner21, and send me a link directly. For anybody that's listening to this as well, if you're looking at getting into co-location, if you're looking at getting into Bitcoin mining, would love to help you out. Whether you work with us or not, I think you should have a good idea of doing your due diligence, because those were some of the things that tripped me up and have tripped many others up. So if you'd like a free resource, just message us at any of those accounts, the word verify. In fact, send verify Dennis, since you came from Dennis and we're listening to this podcast, and we'll send you the list of the 20 questions that you should ask any co-location host before you start working with them. And really appreciate you having me on, Dennis. Thank you.
Cool. That's super awesome. Thank you so much again. And to everybody listening, if you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe and share, all of those things. And we'll be back with another episode soon. And stay curious and keep building, and catch you next time. Thank you so much again, Beau.
Thank
Bye.
you.